except for the fact that I have yet to get the meeting minutes from last week's or last meeting collected yet. So I'll have to apologize that that's on the agenda, but I wasn't able to catch up. So we'll have to do that at our next meeting.
Justin, we are live streaming on YouTube, so we're all set.
Right. Thank you.
Welcome.
And I've got a caller in. Last four numbers 5791. Could you let me know who that is?
Richard Smith.
Welcome, Richard.
The links aren't working.
Uh-oh, okay. And then
So I had to dial in by.
Same problem as me.
Yeah. No problem. And then 0946.
That's me, Justin Floyd. Sipple.
Okay. Welcome, Floyd.
I'm gonna be on the phone. I'm en route to Eugene to the job site, so I'll be on the phone.
Okay, no problem. All right. Well, that's all the folks we were expecting. Mark Owens had a caucus today scheduled over this, so he's not able to make it. And Ken had a medical issue come up with one of his family members, so he's also not able to make it. So this is us today. Marshall, I guess I'll leave it up to you as the vice chair. If you'd like to run us through the agenda, that's great. If not, I am happy to do that for us, if that would be preferable.
I'm happy to do that. You probably have other stuff to do, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I suppose the first order of business is running through some introductions. I'll start with myself. I'm Marshall Gannett, hydrogeologist, retired from USGS, in my second term as a member of this committee, and I'm the vice chair.
Hey, thanks, Marshall. And I'll run through the list here just to keep everybody aware of when they're going to go. So, Phil.
Phil Brown, hydrogeologist from Beaver Creek, Oregon, and my first term is up today.
Up today.
I know. Yep. Right. So off the chain, I'll say whatever I want. Fine.
Susan.
Yeah, I'm Susan Baker, and I am the Drinking Water Program Coordinator for Jackson County.
And Richard.
Richard Smith, Cooper Mountain, Bull Mountain, critical groundwater area, Beaverton area, domestic wells.
And Floyd.
Floyd Sipple, drilling contractor, monitoring well contractors, Salem, Oregon. This is also my first term.
Great, thank you. Chad.
Chad Courtney, water well driller, Pendleton, Oregon.
And Trent.
Trent Kastner, monitoring well driller out of Clackamas for Cascade Drilling.
Great. Run through the OWRD staff real quick. I'm Justin Iverson. I manage the groundwater section. Chris.
Morning, Chris Bird, manager of the well construction and compliance section at WRD.
Bryn.
Morning, everybody. My name is Bryn Hudson. I am the legislative coordinator and a water policy analyst at WRD.
And Nirvana.
Morning, everyone. I'm Nirvana Cook. I'm the executive assistant to Director Tom Byler, and I am here just to help Justin facilitate the meeting. Nice to see you all.
Thanks. And we've got one visitor, Pete Marcos at DEQ.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Pete Marcos, Integrated Water Resource Specialist at DEQ. I've been working at DEQ for about a month and a half, and first meeting, not sure what to expect, but look forward to it.
Welcome.
Okay, so once again, I'm going to have to apologize on the next agenda item. I have not gotten the meeting summary pulled together from our August meeting. In my agenda item at the end, I'll let you know what I have been up to. But I will have that prepped for our first meeting of 2022. Marshall, I got you on mute.
Okay, I had my space bar down, which I thought unmuted me. I guess agenda item D is the summary of the response to the 2020 wildfires. So Bryn, if you want to take it away.
Great. Good morning, everybody. I will share my screen. All right. So hello, thank you for inviting me to chat with you all today. My name is Bryn Hudson again, and I am the Legislative Coordinator and Water Policy Analyst for the Oregon Water Resources Department. So today I'm going to be chatting with you all about the 2020 wildfires and what impacts we saw in the field, and also highlight some of the results that we received from our efforts to survey those impacted by fires about their domestic water wells primarily. And I'll also provide you all with an overview on some funding resources we actually identified during the wildfire season. So with that, we'll jump right in. So as a reminder, the historic 2020 Labor Day wildfires burned over 1.2 million acres of Oregon's forests, structures, and even entire towns in some cases. In addition to the loss of life and trauma endured by all Oregonians, over 300 structures were lost during these wildfire events. And while WRD didn't have direct involvement in response efforts, domestic drinking water wells were identified late in the recovery process as a potentially large piece of private infrastructure that may have been seriously impacted by the fires. So upon further research, we actually identified thousands of domestic drinking water wells that were located within the burn area, and launched an effort to try to ultimately evaluate the damage and respond to issues that some landowners may be having with their domestic drinking water wells. So before we kind of go into what we did and how we sort of handled this process, I do want to note that just because a well was located within a burn area doesn't necessarily mean that it was damaged. There was quite a patchwork and network of wildfires. So just because a well was on a specific property doesn't mean that specific property was actually burned. So as you can see, this is quite an iterative process in trying to figure out what the actual damage of the wildfires were. So we did do some well inspections after the wildfires occurred, and there was discussion of us doing broader surveys of wells in the field. However, that proved to be relatively infeasible for several reasons. The first was safety concerns. There was quite a bit of debris, electrical hazards, other hazards associated with wildfire. So for resources and safety of our staff, sort of a large scale survey of the wildfire areas wasn't really necessarily feasible. There was also challenges, and this is a normal challenge that we face often in finding a well, given the location information, and then the added hurdle of potential damage and debris blocking a well also added that other layer of challenge. There was also issues determining ownership and contacting owners to obtain access to private property. In some burn areas, we still have uninhabited properties, and especially closer to the wildfire dates, folks were not necessarily living on their property, and therefore it was difficult to actually obtain access to private property. And then lastly, we just face issues of not having the same tools and resources in terms of staffing capacity and also the technical tools that some drillers or pump installers may have to actually assess the damage to water wells. So there were a lot of lessons learned during this process, one of which that we learned is that moving on into the future, wildfires will continue to be a problem, and we need to have a better way for well drillers, as they're all out in the field, to document well damage from a wildfire as they're working to respond to landowners that may need repairs or inspections, and sort of working on facilitating those relationships to better understand impacts on wildfires, while also leveraging our limited capacity to conduct well inspections as well. So as an effort to begin assessing the overall impacts that wildfires had on domestic water wells, the department launched a survey about 6 months after the first fires took place. This slide provides a high-level overview of the responses to the survey that we received. I do want to give a couple caveats before we sort of get into the meat of what we actually received, that there was not really an easy way to distribute the survey. And given the low response rate that we received, there's likely many other well damage and well impacts that were not reported in this survey and not captured. So we ultimately had 33 individual responses, both from well owners and from drillers who were actually out in the field repairing, replacing, abandoning, inspecting wells. And we actually had one driller report on over 100 wells and one response, which was really helpful. And that driller estimated the total damage for each well that they worked on to be between $3,000 and $25,000 per well. So pretty wide range of damage that we're seeing. This response has actually been excluded from the graph that you're looking at, just for consistency issues, as that's quite a wide range and that's difficult to actually put on a graph. So based on the wells that are on this graph, we're estimating from the responses that we've received to be around $64,000 worth of reported damage. Although, as you can see on this graph, quite a few landowners didn't actually know the damage estimates, whether that is an access issue to their actual property or an access issue to the well itself, because of a burned pump house or other debris such as trees or structural damage blocking the well. That number is actually likely quite higher. And additionally, if we apply the estimates for the roughly 100 wells that were submitted by that one well driller, so if we essentially take those 100 wells and apply this similar cost distribution to those 100 wells, we can actually estimate the damage to be over $2 million. And that is just the wells that we received surveys on. So again, there's likely many more wells that didn't even cross our path or haven't even been discovered yet. So that number is likely higher. In terms of damage, we saw a pretty wide range of reported damage. This spanned from structural damage, from pump houses being fully burnt, to external damage to infrastructure, so well casings, pipes, electrical issues, and electrical panels being fully burnt out, pipes being fully burnt out. In terms of internal damage, the only really consistent issue that we saw, and this is purely anecdotal and from our field inspection, which is a limited snapshot of what we actually saw. But pumps were sort of fried with the heat from fire. But in terms of internal infrastructure damage, we lacked the necessary equipment to actually do those inspections in a systematic way. So in terms of the internal infrastructure, we don't really have a whole lot of information on what those impacts were, except for extreme damage to pumps that might have just been fried from the heat. So as you can see, this is an imperfect estimation effort on, to evaluate the overall impacts of fires on domestic wells. But ultimately, it did drive home the point and confirmed our suspicions that there is a pretty large need and assistance across the state in terms of providing funding resources for private wells. So as a result, we went to work identifying a variety of grant and loan opportunities available for folks, some of which I'd like to share with this group. So the federal government offered several resources for landowners. The first I want to highlight is the USDA Rural Development Single Family House and Repair Grants and Loans Program. This program ultimately helps homeowners upgrade the livability of their homes, primarily focused around safety and sanitation. And the primary target in terms of for loans and grants are focused around low-income families for loans, and grants are actually only available for low-income seniors. So a fairly limited population, but focused around folks who really actually are in dire need of the assistance to upgrade safety and sanitation around their home. FEMA also offered a variety of funding opportunities via their private assistance program and ultimately doled out around $50,000 in assistance for well repairs. So that was, we were given that information after the fact. So, you know, we can factor in those, that dollar amount into our estimation as well. However, given the low amount and high number of wells that they actually were able to dole out assistance for, it seems that FEMA really funded and focused on funding sort of the more moderate to low cost estimate wells. So total abandonment and replacements and new wells didn't appear to be the target funding audience for the FEMA assistance program. Additionally, the Rural Community Assistance Corporation offered household water well system loans, and they also offered free well assessments across the state, which was super helpful for folks who knew that they needed work on their wells but didn't know what work needed to be done. And lastly, this is a new funding resource that was ultimately part of the department's House Bill 2145, which passed during the 2021 legislative session. This was a modernization and overhaul of many aspects of our well construction and compliance program. And ultimately, one aspect of this bill was the establishment of the Well Replacement, Repair, and Abandonment Fund that ultimately focuses on assisting domestic well owners whose wells have deficiencies, whose wells have been impacted by groundwater level declines or natural disasters such as wildfires, or those who are just of lower to moderate income and need assistance in repairing, replacing, or abandoning their wells. So details on this funding is still pretty sparse, as we're still working internally to sort of figure out if we need rulemaking and to set the program up and seeing what hurdles we need to overcome. But funding should be available midway through 2022 is what we are anticipating. In addition to infrastructure concerns, I do also want to highlight that there were some issues and concerns around drinking water quality and the potential contamination of volatile organic compounds or VOCs in domestic wells. So this is more the Oregon Health Authority's area of expertise, and they actually launched a voucher program to provide free drinking water testing in order to help well owners test their domestic water quality ultimately before using it. So this program was launched, pretty soon after the wildfires, and has since been reauthorized in order to continue helping folks during the recovery process. And this program also ultimately helped well owners conduct self-guided evaluations to understand the scope of damage impacted by their well, to determine, if it was just a water quality issue or if there were other issues with infrastructure that needed to be addressed by certified pump installer, well constructor, and then also helped connect folks with us to help them navigate the interior well infrastructure process in terms of recovering and getting repairs in order. So that was a lot of information. I went pretty quickly for the sake of time, but I am happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
I have one. So one of the things that was coming up was the issue of abandon and replace on some of these. Was there a significant number of the wells where like the casing was destroyed by heat, the surface casing was destroyed by heat, which would make somebody lean towards abandon and replace? Did that happen? I mean, that's something that is checked off a significant number of times.
So one thing I will say about the way we set the survey up is it was more targeted at landowners rather than well drillers. So the level of technical expertise that we received on the actual, what was the damage, what is the cost estimate, was varied widely. I would say that of the 33 respondents that we had, off the top of my head, I think a handful, maybe 5, had full abandonments identified in the damage. So, in terms of 30, that's, that is a significant, not a significant, but that is a marketable chunk of folks that actually anticipated a full abandonment. Of casing and folks specifically referencing casing, I don't know if I could necessarily and confidently speak to folks being able to call out that casing was a specific issue. The results were more of a laundry list of things that appeared to be broken, like electrical panels, pipes being melted, stuff like that, pump house being fully destroyed, things like that. But I would say that the folks that appeared to kind of have a broader technical knowledge of wells, I would say there were about five to six full abandonments that were marked when folks responded to the survey.
Thanks.
Yep.
And down here in Jackson County, we were greatly affected by the wildfires. And what I heard from pump companies is that the fire melted all the components, as you said, on the top of the well head, at which dropped the pump. So they were running around pulling pumps out, and that's all they did for a week or two. But I would back up what you said. It's more about the well house, the water piping, but I haven't heard much from the pump companies about the actual casing being damaged.
And I guess maybe a follow-up for our well drillers, I really don't have a good idea of how often PVC casing is used in water wells. Is that relatively common or uncommon?
And then for the fires, it was more of the distribution systems that were melted or affected. And then the concern is that the VOCs will leach over time. So I don't know, the casing is so deep, I don't know if it would have been affected by the fire. But it's 4 feet or 6 feet for the distribution systems.
And then there's the neoprene seal on the cap and rubber on the wiring that goes downhole. I imagine at least that the surface would get hot enough to melt all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Floyd, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the plastic casing is legal to use. However, in the 50 years I've been in this industry, I've never used plastic casing.
Okay.
But it's I don't know, there's very few wells out there that I've ever seen that are, the casing is plastic. Most of the issues that we've had up the San Ian Canyon have been the wells on PVC pipe that have melted and dropped down the well. So there's a process of trying to fish those out, replace the top, and clean the well out the best we can.
And are you guys pretty successful fishing those out? Does that lead to any abandonments if those things can't be grabbed?
We have been. Most of the time pumps are set about 20 feet off the bottom, which, if it's got a static that's 40 feet, you're able to see it. We have cameras. We have ways of fishing them out. So far, everyone we went after, we've gotten.
Okay.
That's about all.
Okay, this is Marshall here. Any additional questions for Bryn? If not, should we move on to agenda item E? Which is an update on House Bill 2145 by Chris Bird. But first, I'll say thank you, Bryn. That was a really interesting presentation, and it's interesting to think all the ways that wells, which are mostly underground, right, can be affected by, well, other than the electrical infrastructure and the distribution system. But I hadn't even thought about the drop pipes melting and just dropping the whole pump down the well. Are these all mostly domestic wells? Were there any irrigation wells in the survey? There must be some, turbine pumps in areas that were burned, but you're mainly focused on domestic wells?
Yeah, we were mainly focused on domestic wells for several reasons. One, just drinking water we felt was, the most pressing issue that needed to be addressed. And then we were also working with the Potable Water Task Force, or the Potable Water Resources Task Force, which was a task force that was stood up with a variety of other agencies. So OHA, DEQ, and several federal programs that were mainly focused on the drinking water side of things. So that was sort of why we narrowed our scope a bit and focused more on the domestic side of things.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
let's go ahead. Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item E then. Chris, the screen is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll just comment on the PVC casing. We see more of that on the coast range and in areas with highly mineralized water where steel casing might be affected, more than PVC. It's kind of interesting, but anyway, so I'm here to talk about an update on House Bill 2145. I'll try and share my screen here. See if it's successful. 1 second. Okay. Is that being? Can you see it?
Yes, we got it. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. So as a reminder, through here. So House Bill 2145 was put in place to help the well construction program. Just kind of as a refresher, the program has really struggled over the years due to limited resources, the funding, this Star Card fee, which pays for a lot of the program, hasn't increased since 2009. There's practices in the rules and statutes that basically doesn't keep up with technology. And in some cases, it's a problem where we don't have the authority to enforce on things or to regulate things that you think you might be able to. For instance, welding, the ability to weld properly. We didn't have the ability to kind of require someone to go and prove to us that they have the ability to weld. And that's included in the bill, which is nice. So what brought about House Bill 2145, just kind of in a nutshell, is a 2016 Secretary of State audit really recognized the fact that our program needed help, right? We needed to to modernize it. And it was also recognized in our 2017 Integrated Water Resources Strategy, the 2019 Strategic Plan, as well as, internally, we just kind of knew. And that was a great opportunity to kind of to move forward changes to the program. So in 2020, WR decided to run the legislation to modernize the program. So we spent a lot of hours really with members of the Groundwater Association. A lot of people gave up, quite a bit of time really to help us work this bill and get it into shape to where it would be acceptable for the department and for the regulated community. We had drillers, water treatment folks, as well as the consulting community that helped us to get the bill to where it would be help us, but it would also not be impactful on the drilling community. It also, by having all these meetings, it allowed everybody to really talk about their concerns about the proposed changes to the bill. The bill we ended up with, doesn't look like the bill we started with. Obviously, there was just, there was a lot really that both sides wanted, but I think we came to a good compromise to where we could identify deficiencies early in well construction. And then the drillers would also have comfort knowing that, you know, they're not maybe going to be on the hook for a well that they drilled 10 or 20 years ago if there was a misconstruction that wasn't recognized by the department until later. Anyway, so after a lot of back and forth and a lot of discussions over 2020, the House Bill 2145 was passed by the legislature, and the changes that are in the bill are going to be implemented over the next several years. And the first piece is actually going to kick in here in January. So the January pieces that are going to take effect January 1st are the Well Abandonment, Repair, and Replacement Fund. And like Bryn talked about, that is being worked on in the department. Funds will probably be available, hopefully, by mid 2022. And there's also a Star Card fee increase, which, like I said, hadn't been increased since 2009. So the fee went from $225 to $350, and that takes place, like I said, in January. Drillers are going to be required now to submit an exempt use map with the well, with the exempt use wells when they file a well report, as well as a $300 registration fee. And then in January, also, we're expanding the Continuing Education Committee. In July of next year, the technical well log review requirements kick in, and that's going to require the department to review 100% of the well logs that come into the department within 120 days and notify the drillers that those well reports have been inspected or reviewed. And then, like I mentioned before, we have proof of welding ability to get a license. Or if when we're inspecting a well, we notice deficiencies, we can require the driller to get training or to provide evidence of their welding ability. In 2023, there's going to be the increased Star Card notice requirements, which requires additional time for Star Cards to be submitted. And also, Star Cards will have a limited amount of time that they're valid. So right now, a Star Card is valid forever. So if someone submits a Star Card, in 2001, it would still be valid today if it was not canceled. The Star Card notice requirements the Star Card will expire after 60 days. And then we're adding injunctive authority, and then the Star Card and well log e-file requirements will take place in July of 2024, which means that well constructors will be required to submit Star Cards or well reports online in July of 2024. So in regards to implementation, the department has been really working hard to get the word out to drillers about the changes coming up in the bill. There's a lot of drillers that may not read the well said, which is where we did a lot of advertising. And so on the homepage here, you'll see the new House Bill 2145 section that talks about the changes that are coming up in January. But this isn't the only thing we're doing to get the word out. We're really pushing hard to notify drillers. For example, in October, we had a well said article that really went over the whole bill. It discussed, it told basically the story of the House bill, how it came to be, how we worked with others to develop the language. I see a question there from Trent. Do you want me to stop?
Yeah, Chris, I got a question. It pertains to, I've been getting a lot of questions from a lot of our monitoring well folks pertaining to the welding requirement for getting a monitoring well license. Most times we're not allowed to weld on monitoring wells. So is that still pertaining to monitoring well licenses? That's the direct question I have gotten, and I haven't seen anything definitive on that.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So this is a statutory requirement, and it's for a water well license. And with the water well license, you have endorsements, right? You have a monitoring well endorsement or a water well endorsement. It's a requirement for the license in general, so you would have to prove welding ability to get a license. So yep, it would apply to both.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Yep, you bet. So going back to the WellSed article in October was pretty comprehensive. That was kind of the first shot we put out to people to notify them. We're really trying to limit surprises for folks in January when they go to file a well report and they can't file it unless they pay online. And so any way we can get the word out, you know, to make it easier, or, you know, where everyone's aware of what's coming up, the better for us. So we launched the webpage, 2145 webpage in October. We've coordinated with OGWA as much as we can. They've been really great through this, working with us. And we had staff attend the fall conference to talk about the bill. We also, in regard to the solicitation for continuing ed members, in October, we sent out letters and we posted on our website seeking the new membership for the committee. We need one person. We got 2 new members, one from water quality and water treatment, and then another person from safety. We're actually having trouble finding a safety person to serve on the committee. So if y'all know anybody, please send them our way. We have had interest in the water quality, water treatment side, so that's good. But we really are trying to find that safety person, and are having difficulty. So we've also connected with partner agencies to advertise the continuing ed information on their web pages. We did a 1-pager in October talking about the changes. It basically was a miniature art, similar to the article that we did in the first WellSed, but it was a lot shorter, but it did tell the story, and it talked about the upcoming January changes. And then we're also going to do another one, another mailing in December, around the December 15th. So that'll be going out again soon. It's similar to the first one, but we want to make sure we catch people who didn't get the first one. Along with that, we've actually called every driller that's licensed in the state to notify them that these changes are coming up. We haven't made contact with all of them. We've tried, we've left messages, and we keep trying to reach out to the ones we haven't been able to connect to. Our inspectors have called the drillers in their regions to, you know, so that they're familiar with those people. And then we're also communicating in the field when we talk to drillers on site. So communication is, I think, the key to kind of having a smooth transition on January 1st. So we're hoping that with all this, you know, reaching out, that we'll be able to connect with everybody. We know everyone won't be happy. You know, we've gotten that quite a few times from people about the changes, specifically the fee increases and the fact that drillers will now be required to pay the $300 exempt use fee and submit the map. But I think by being informed, you know, they seem to at least understand that it's coming and are, you know, are working with us on it. So this is a list again of what we're doing. The implementation actually of the exempt use has been the most difficult for us. That's taking place, like I said, in January, and that's where the drillers will be required to submit the exempt use map and pay the fee. We have the well construction section is meeting weekly with our computer folks. There's a lot of language, computer language that has to happen in order for this to kind of be a smooth transition to drillers paying the fee. Previously, the landowners got a bill after the driller submitted a well report, and the bill had an invoice number, and it had a passcode, like a password almost, to go in and pay the fee. So it would show that well report had a fee paid. The way it's going to work now is when a driller submits a well report electronically, when they hit submit at the end of the entry process, they'll be required to pay that fee for exempt use wells. One of the problems we've had developing this new system is determining which wells you have to pay for and which you don't. You know, as you can imagine, there's a lot of, you know, language that has to go along with that decision. If they have a water right, they wouldn't have to, as long as the well is associated with that water right, but then you have to determine, well, is that well really associated with the water right? Is it not? Is it an application or is it an actual permit, or, you know? So in the case of exempt use wells, the driller tells us that it's associated with water right. We're gonna, they can get past paying the fee, but we're gonna look at every one of those just to make sure that that, you know, that it's not actually an exempt use well. There may be some confusion, we think, in the beginning as we work through these. In the map process for these exempt use wells, right now, drillers can submit a map with their well report, and it's going to be similar to that, the way it is now. So it won't be a big change for folks, other than the fact that they'll have to submit a map. And it's not a lot of work, it's just built into the process. So we really, I don't know that if they were submitting a map before, I don't know that they'll really even notice a difference. And the benefit really for the map, for us and for drillers really, is the fact that we'll be able to get GPS coordinates for the well. When they click on a map and make a map, we'll capture those GPS coordinates. And previously, when a landowner would submit a map, you know, their coordinates, they may not be as specific about where the well is located. So we're hoping, and we believe, that drillers will be much more accurate in their location descriptions. And when they click on a map, then because they're, you know, landowners. We also have to create the system to where landowners can, if they're drilling their own well, that they have to pay that fee. So that's another issue, is that the fee is required when they submit the report. So I see a hand from Nirvana.
Hey, Nirvana, you're muted, but I wonder if you're raising your hand to see if Floyd had a question.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
go ahead. Go ahead, Floyd.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to look at my numbers in Drive. I have a few questions for Chris. So in implementing the welding requirements, are you going to require welding requirements for landowners that are submitting wells? That's one question. Get a pencil, because I got several, Chris. Another one is your notice to cement and place a seal. As I mentioned earlier, this is my 50th year in this industry, 32 years on my own in my own company. For the last 3-4 months, I've been trying to target when my driller's going to seal. I hit one date out of all of those wells. I don't know how you can anticipate, because a lot of times one well could take a day, it could take 3 weeks, or it could take, in some cases, 6 to 10 months or over a year. So targeting that, I think, is going to end up with a lot of phone calling to the department saying, you know, hey, we missed our target date. I would like to know how you're going to handle that. And then my next question is your well log review. Historically, a well log review is just to make sure the boxes were all filled in without looking at the construction of the well, the amount of casing put in, the geology of where that casing was placed. So when you're going to do a technical well review, number one is, how well trained are these people in construction of a well, and what is that going to entitle as a technical review? Thanks, Chris.
Sure. Yep, good questions. So the welding is for licensed drillers, right? Landowners aren't required to meet that requirement. But landowners have a lot of supervision from the department. For example, the department, they have to notify us 10 days in advance of placing the seal on a landowner well when they construct it themselves. And we also make a point to get out and be there pretty frequently when they're constructing the well. We have to approve their design before, before they are issued a permit. There's a lot of interaction. And really, we don't see a lot of landowner steel cased wells. There's been some, but it's not very common. Typically, landowner wells are like dug wells or pretty shallow PVC cased wells. But that is something that we're concerned about when they, a complicated well by a landowner. And there has been some cases where it's been a problem, but we've addressed those as they come up. As far as the seal, yeah, that is something I think everybody's going to have to get used to that. That's not kicking in yet. I think that's 2023 where that kicks in. And it's good. There's going to have to be some communication between the driller and the well inspectors so that we can be there when the seal is being placed. I know you're right, though, that it's difficult to know exactly when a seal is going to be placed when you submit a start card. We're just going to have to, I think both sides are just going to have to develop a system of dealing with that. And I think as time goes by, everyone will get more familiar with, getting some sort of idea of when that's going to happen and getting a system of communication that works well for both sides. And your other question was, can you refresh my memory?
Technical well review. Qualifications of the.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So our inspectors are going to be doing the well log reviews, as well as staff well construction compliance section. So these are going to be people that are, familiar with drilling and the well construction rules and statutes. It's not going to be someone who would normally just look to make sure boxes are checked. These are going to be people that know what they're doing. Plus, we work with the groundwater folks when we're talking about lithology or we're talking about aquifer systems. They generally will help us confirm what we think we're seeing as far as aquifers and confining units and things like that. We do it all the time now. Before we contact a driller, if there's a question about it, we always confirm our understanding of a system so that we're not contacting you in error, So that's something we've always been concerned about, to be correct before we notify a driller. So, and we'll continue that process. So, any other questions? No.
Chris, I have a recommendation if I have another opportunity.
Sure.
I made a recommendation to Buffy that perhaps at an upcoming seminar, if we're going to be making maps, I've tried several times on the computer to make a map, and it seems like I'm doing something wrong because I lose the whole process. I got to start all over again. I was wondering if she could do a little educational or somebody from the department on the process of making a map electronically off your GPS locations, and maybe have what I call a cheat sheet, something that would be set up to where you could follow it until you got used to it. Just a suggestion that I have that I'd like to pass along.
Yeah, no, great idea. I'll make a note here. Yeah, our intent is to make it kind of seamless and an easy process. We don't want to make it a burden for you guys. It's a requirement, but we're trying to make it very simple and straightforward. So anything we can do to help, we're happy to do that. So kind of moving on here. Well, I mentioned before the updating of landowner, the information required by landowner when they submit a well report, if they're doing the well themselves, the fee. You'd think that would be an easy process, you know, a fee with a well report if they submit a, you know, well or construct their own well. Or if a driller submits a well report on paper versus online. Online, it's going to be, it's complicated, but it's easier really than a receipt, believe it or not. Once we get the computer language written, it won't be that bad, knock on wood. We get a fee online. But the paper process is a lot of receiving and moving around of documents that has to happen before that fee actually gets tied to a well report. Because we have to tie it to a well report number, which is generated later in the process. And so then we have to go back and update that report to show that it's been paid and then update the receiving information. We've had a number of meetings on just the paperwork receiving for well report exempt use fees, paper well report exempt use. So it's kind of inside baseball stuff, but it's there's a lot of process that has to happen with all these changes. We're going from a landowner paying the fee after the driller submits a report to now collecting the fee up front. I see another hand.
Yeah, Chris, this is Chad Courtney. Just, I guess, clarification. So on the, say you get a new licensed driller, do they, as far as the welding goes, does somebody have to say, yes, this guy can weld before he actually gets the license? And, or who are you guys going to use to do that? I guess it was just curiosity.
Right. So just for clarification, that doesn't kick in yet, that piece. I think that's 2023 where that kicks in. But so they would have to submit some sort of certification to us, like from a community college. And we haven't figured out other ways of doing it yet. You know, for instance, I mean, when we were initially coming up with that, we talked about having a driller, you know, that they work with a bonded driller, kind of certify their welding and that kind of thing. But I believe that the language is written now, it has to be like community college or some sort of class proving that they have the experience. We don't have any professional welders on staff that could just go out and observe. So we're going to need something, you know, where they can demonstrate that they have that experience.
Right. That's my curiosity. So that, and that's what I was wondering if, like, when we, you know, get a new hire and we make them weld quite a bit, we put it through, you know, kind of the same kind of bin test and different things that, say, the community college would do. That's why I'm curious if somehow the bonded driller could say, yes, I certify this guy, I'm responsible for this. You know, is something like that, could something like that be acceptable to the department?
Not at this point. We're still going to work out a lot of the details. We'll be getting word out to drillers on what that exactly means. To tell you the truth, right now we're really focused on the January piece, but there'll be more to come on that. We, you know, I think that is something that we need to talk about. But if something was done like that, it would have to be involved in rulemaking or something. It wouldn't be something we just come up with as a department. It'd be something that we have to have, you know, agreed with the industry. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Sure. So the exempt use program, since the fees are now moving to a driller versus a landowner, we have to do rulemaking for that. And so that's coming up very soon. We're I believe, trying to do that in December. It'll probably be just a really kind of a brief meeting because the changes are simply implementing the statute. And we're also adding an enforcement component in 690-225, which is well construction rules. And then also in 690-260, which is for other than well constructors. For instance, landowners, if they don't pay the fee or if they don't submit the map. We don't really anticipate doing a lot of enforcements on this kind of thing, but we have to add that language so we have the ability to do that if necessary. So, okay. That's it. Anyone have any questions? Any more questions? Very good. Well, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. That was really interesting, and a lot of really great questions by other members of the committee. Unless there are any other questions for Chris on House Bill 2145, I'd propose we go on to the groundwater update, and we are 2 minutes ahead of the schedule on the agenda, which is great. So, Justin, do you want to take it from here?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I've mostly got a laundry list of things just to keep folks up to date on. No slides. Feel free to raise your hand or just start talking if you have any questions as we go. First thing on the list is reappointments. So at the commission meeting on Friday, we'll be putting forward Phil, Trent, and Ken Maston for second terms. Really appreciate that everybody's agreed to stay on for another 3 years. That'll make it good continuity going into next year. So thanks for your first terms, and look forward to working with you for another. A few things that we've been focused on since our last meeting. So we talked about the department's budget during our last meeting, and between the positions we had been holding open because of COVID and the positions that were added by the 2021 legislature, we have something like 70 vacant positions to fill, and it's just been a scramble. In the groundwater section, we have 11 to fill. We've actually hired one, so there's some internal shuffling first of all, and then we've hired one outside person, and have another nearing the offer letter stage. Still have 9 to go, and the hiring is something that we haven't done for a couple of years, again, given COVID and such. So everybody's ramping up, including our HR group. Chris also has a number of positions in the well construction compliance section, and folks that are going to come on as additional well inspectors, as you heard in that last bit. Another focus that we have is on working down our backlogs. So again, past couple of years. Oh, I'm sorry, Marshall, go ahead.
Just a quick question. What's the nature of the positions that you're trying to fill in the groundwater section?
Sure, thank you. So it really spans the range. So we got, I guess I'll go from the top down. We got funding for an assistant groundwater manager, so that's great. There's going to be 21 people in the group. That's really going to be helpful in both managing folks as well as keeping some things going that I have put on the back burner just out of necessity. So keeping closer tabs on all the groundwater studies that are going on, making sure that our observation well installation program is moving along, as well as all the administrative tasks that go with that, making sure that we're in contact with the State Historic Preservation Office and any potentially affected tribes and areas where we're drilling, getting the contracts in place, so on and so forth. We've got 3 senior level NRS, our natural resource specialist 4 positions. We have 3 of those to fill. We've got 6 entry to mid-level positions, hydrogeologists to fill. We've got a couple people in our data group, so we've really expanded our database structures and how those are linked to tools that are being, we've got people now in-house building Python tools or using Python to program into GIS, or ModFlow is now Python based, or there's a Python based version. So we've got some talented people that came out of school with those skills that we weren't necessarily looking for, but that have proven to be really useful because they've been able to build better tools for us. And so we're going to expand that group, get more things out for folks to self-serve on the website as far as data and information and analysis goes. And then we've got a couple, I'm calling them we've got at least one geotech position, and that's not like classic foundation work, but more in the vein of we have data techs and hydrotechs, right? So somebody that can, we collect a lot of cuttings from the well drilling community, and it takes time to wash those and process them and get them into trays and get samples off to the lab and get that stuff uploaded. So things like that, which, a undergraduate level geologist would be positioned to do, which I'm really excited about, because that's a lot of good information that we leave sitting on the table because it's not our primary focus, but it could be really helpful in helping build our hydrogeologic conceptual models. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, so also kind of related to the funding we received, the positions we received, we have a lot of expectations for catching up on work that we have, again, backburnered due to open positions and just resource constraints. So working down backlogs in our application process for groundwater rights is a priority for us. We also have, and we've got maybe, I don't know, about 150 reviews to do. So it's a pretty significant workload that we started focusing on last month. We also have a pretty significant contested case backlog. I think we've got 66 pending contested cases that are groundwater related, that are mostly related to application process and various decisions, both yes and no, that folks disagree with. So we have a number of administrative cases, and we're pushing 6 of those actively with plans to continue to work those forward. So that takes some significant staff time for us to ramp up and present our best available information and our preponderance of the evidence to an administrative law judge in those cases. In addition to the groundwater folks we're trying to get in, and we've been doing so much recruiting and we've gotten we've gotten one additional body in the door, one soon. It's just the lag time between being able to have functional people working on additional stuff and actually getting things done is it's a bit daunting. So doing our best to do that and move those things forward. And in the meantime, we're creating kind of other backlogs as we go, but that's a focus. Applications, contested cases. Other things that aren't going as fast, just to make sure that I keep them in people's minds, a number of items from House Bill 2018, including a statewide really water budget, but with a groundwater focus work. The USGS has been continuing to work on that scope. No updates since our last discussion in August, but they're doing that concurrently with their work in the Walla Walla Basin study and finishing up the Harney Basin study. And that Harney Basin study, the final reports are making their way through the USGS scientific publishing network, the editors, and all the content has been approved on those. And one of them has been fully formatted, and the second one just needs to go through the formatting editing stage, and those should be out. I know I've been saying they'll be out soon for about a year now, but it truly feels close, so that's good. Just want to note that the commission has asked us to have a slot at Friday's meeting to talk about groundwater allocation. There'll be more discussion that's coming on the heels of our groundwater concerns report that we presented back in June. And I suspect, I don't know exactly where that discussion is going to lead, but I suspect that's going to be a topic. Whatever comes out of it is going to be something that I'll bring back to this group at our first meeting next year, and something that I expect or suspect maybe will be an ongoing piece of work for our discussion. So we'll see how that goes. Y'all are welcome to tune in Friday online. I think the spot's at 11, but I haven't double checked the agenda. I think you guys are all on the commission listserv and should get the links to those agendas, but if not, regardless, I'll send something out at the end of this meeting just so everybody's got the agenda with the YouTube live stream and the meeting login if you'd like to make a comment or be there for a comment. So I just wanted to flag that. And then lastly, wanted to note that our next meeting is likely going to be in mid-March. So there'll be a bit of a hiatus before we see each other again. I will make sure that I get out email communication with an agenda as we get closer, and with a calendar for 2022. In the past, we've used this last meeting of the year to check in to make sure that the Tuesdays before commission meetings continues to work with folks. If anybody had other thoughts, I'm open to them. Again, I'll remind people that the reason we do that is because for any item that's going to go before the commission, by the Tuesday before we've got the presentation to the commission, I can give a preview of that to the Groundwater Advisory Committee. I can gather any input, and then I can incorporate your input into the presentation that I then give to the commission a couple days later. So that's the main purpose for the timing, but happy to discuss if anybody feels like a different time would be better. Okay, and that is all I have for updates, unless folks have anything on their mind that I didn't mention or have any other questions. Marshall.
The two reports that are coming out for Harney are the water budget report and sort of the general hydrogeology report.
That's correct.
Has there, what sort of target do you have for releasing the modeling work? Or I'm assuming that's going to result in a report as well. What's their time frame on that? Do you know?
That's correct. I think that the model should be built and the report writing started in 2022, and I believe the plan is for an early 2023 release of the actual model publicly with the report so that folks can pull that out and use it. There's still a lot of discussion in the Harney Basin. The place-based planning group has continued to meet monthly. They've been on a monthly schedule for some time now. They've gotten their planning documents drafted and are working toward consensus agreements on a number of recommendations. They've also had some side contracts looking at potential what they call water banking ideas, or water markets, which is a way to take a look at, for example, the Australian model or some California examples of local agreements that could be put in place that would allow or ease the transfer process, essentially, to allow folks to trade around available water within an area. It's been pretty interesting, a lot more nuanced than I had expected or than I had imagined. So we're hoping that the ModFlow model will be something that can be plugged in to inform a potential water banking scheme or water market scheme.
Right.
Oh.
One, the original is, if I'm remembering correctly, the original the set of administrative rules that sort of were put in place to handle all the pending water rights in the central Harney Basin and sort of the broader area had in it like a 2020 target to, and I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously that the process has taken a little longer, but has the local community out there, have you guys worked with them and everybody's cool with sort of the way that the timeline has evolved? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And if a 2-sentence answer is fine. You don't need to go into a big, but
Sure.
turned out not to be as big of an issue, and everybody sort of likes where things are headed. Is that a fair statement?
It's a mixed bag. I think that folks understand that it takes time, and we set a pretty aggressive timeline and haven't made it. That's the same with the place-based planning group. That's taking longer than folks expected. So that builds a little empathy with the process, right? That it just takes time to get everybody on board. Some people are absolutely fine with it. Others, wished that there would have been more action back in 2016, for example. So it really depends on a person's specific situation, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Justin on his update? If not, then I think we move on to agenda item G, which is just sort of committee member updates. So I would open it up to anybody who has any comments or updates for the committee, relevant to their particular area of expertise and interest. Okay, well, I'll waste a little bit of time here. First of all, I think I appreciate, Floyd and Trent and Chad weighing in on sort of the drilling industry's perspective, particularly as it relates to Chris's presentation. I kind of was hoping to hear an update from Ken and from Mark on kind of what had been going on in with the irrigation community, because both of those guys in our last meeting painted pretty grim pictures of what was going on or how things were shaping up, and so we'll have to hold up, wait until next time to hear from them. But I know things were it was a rough year for ag. But I'm interested, Susan, at the last meeting you mentioned how there was sort of a bit of a storm brewing between the cannabis irrigators and sort of the general water use community. Did that take any bad turns, or how did that play out this last season? And you're muted, by the way. Oh, there we go.
So there has been a lot of action in taking down grows. And I think, they've found, it's been amazing, but they say that the law of enforcement says there are thousands of more grows in Jackson and Josephine County. So, but I think there's at least the community is becoming aware of the situation if they aren't already, and they're thankful for the actions that have been taken. A lot of the problem is that law enforcement are working on building these cases before they go in and take it all down, so that there's some time, lag there. But I still hear from domestic well owners next to grow outfits who claim that they're taking their groundwater, or that their well is no longer producing what it did. And so I encourage them to reach out to the water master. But yeah, it'll be, I think the expected date to resolve all the problems it's probably in the 10 to 20 years.
Wow.
Because what happens is that these grow outfits are really cartel based, and they will have 10 different grow outfits, and they know that they're going to lose a couple of them. And that's part of their business model, just to assume that. So it's really truly the Wild West. And Siobhan, the water master, and his staff, I think they should probably be packing guns.
Wow. So I guess it didn't dawn on me when you spoke about this at our last meeting that it sounds like it's primarily the illegal grow operations as opposed to the licensed ones that are the problem.
And that's what the sheriff said, it was in the thousands. And these outfits not only are using water illegally, but they're involved in, drug trafficking, sex trafficking. I mean, it's a huge problem. And thankfully they're getting more funding to take, OLCC is involved but it is a serious mess down here.
Okay, well, that was more than I was bargaining for, but thanks for the update. So anybody else have anything they want to? The only other thing on the sort of the hydrogeology side, the Geological Society of America had their national meeting here in Portland in October. It was kind of poorly attended. It was going to be a big in-person meeting, and everybody had to be vaccinated and have a negative test to go, but there were no federal employees allowed to go because the federal government wasn't going to send people to Portland because of the infection rates, and that kind of really diminished a lot of the attendance. And I only went one day myself. Being a retired federal employee, I could do what I darn well please. And the downside of that was I had to pay my own fee, which was a bunch of money for one day. But it was sort of not a lot. It wasn't a really big meeting. There wasn't a lot really going on, which was unfortunate. So anyway, so that's kind of the only thing from my perspective anyway on the hydrogeology side. Anybody else? Because then the last agenda item, if there isn't, we would move on to public comment. Okay, hearing nothing, I would propose we move on to agenda item H. And Justin, are there any members of the general public here?
Nope, just us Groundwater Advisory Committee members.
Okay, well, so that takes care of that agenda item then. So then I guess I would move that we adjourn here a little bit early, but anything else, any new business, anything else anybody wants to bring up? Then I would call the meeting adjourned.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I just want to say I really appreciate your time over the past year. Have appreciated having everybody's input. Hope everyone has a good holiday season, and we will be back in touch in about March.
Yeah, be sure to send that link for the commission meeting. I might try to listen in on that Friday.
I'll send that now.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Trying to get off.
All right, Nirvana, I'm going to close out. Let me know if there's anything else you need me to do. All fine.